to welcome you to another database marketing hangout with top real estate professional Brian Gubernick out of Phoenix. Brian's very special. He has, I believe, he's in 5 or 6 different markets with his real estate team. And more or less, I think he's almost invented the concept of expansion before it was a hot topic in the real estate world. He was already partnering with other real estate agents in various markets to expand his reach. So that presents a unique challenge if you're going to be running a database marketing program. I mean, do you run 5 different blogs, one in each market? You know, do you have the agents in each individual market sending videos to their database? It kind of complicates the core viral marketing plan of sending 2 videos a month out to your database. So we went back and forth on what the best way to do that is, and we're going to kind of reveal what the strategy that Brian does to communicate with all of the databases and all the different markets, you know, what's sent out, how that's leveraged to viral. You're going to learn that here. But you're also going to learn a little bit deeper on some of the concepts of running an expansion team. So I think it's going to be very interesting today. There's not, it's kind of a newer concept in real estate of expanding what you're doing in one market to another market. I think anyone watching this hangout, based upon the description, is probably interested in those concepts of how to move into a new market, and that's what I want to talk about today with you, Brian. So, Brian, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure, great. So, why don't we just start with when you made the decision to expand? Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of start there, and then spend the rest of the hangout of everything you did up to that point. All right, of where you are now. So, when did you decide to expand? You're at what point with your real estate business in Phoenix?
Well, so I was I kicked off in Phoenix in February of 2007, which was at the greatest time in real estate, right in the midst of a market crash. I decided to start a career, so I'm a real genius. I launched, though, I won't give you the whole backstory and bore you with it, but basically I was right in the short sales from the start. And I didn't necessarily understand it was going to be the opportunity that it became. But I was in 07, 08, 09, 10, even most of 11, I was probably 95% short sale based, which is pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. Here in Phoenix, you know, like I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona today. I mean, our market, as you know, Frank, was in excess of 60% distressed at one time. So if you weren't in short sale, you were in REO. And if you weren't playing in either of those areas, those niches, you weren't doing a whole heck of a lot of business here at one moment. So my business started in the short sale niche, and it was around 2010 where, you know, we were still in the midst of it. It wasn't really slowing down, but I found myself saying all the time, gosh, if I could go back in time, I would do this. Or, you know, if I could change this back then, I would have, and I would have had even more success. And I kept saying these things and then recognized, well, gosh, I can kind of go back in time because there's all these other markets around the country outside of Phoenix, Vegas, California, Florida, and a couple others, Michigan, that really weren't hit to our extent, but were really a couple years behind us. So Phoenix was, unfortunately, and fortunate for me, unfortunate for its market, was ahead of the curve when it came to the stress market. So for me, after asking that question so many times, I ultimately found myself going to other markets and saying, can I take this niche, this engine, and apply this same concept to another market altogether, which is what brought me to Seattle in July of 2011. So I was in Phoenix in 07. In July 2011, I found myself in Bellevue, Washington, running the exact same short sale model. Now, granted, the market in the Northwest was never as bad. Prices didn't dip like they did here in Arizona. But because of that, every realtor didn't have to jump into short sales either. So while the percentage of short sales was much smaller in Washington, the competition for me, I mean, frankly, there wasn't any. There was only my team and a handful of other teams that were doing short sales at a high level. So I went there, took my short sale engine and brought it to Washington, from Washington to Oregon. And by the time I got to Oregon, the market had started changing. So I ran that short sale business as long as I could. Now, I still have a good amount of short sales today, believe it or not, but it's not 95% of my business. It's more so, 20% of my business. So from Oregon, I ended up in Michigan, and from Michigan, I went to California to Denver, and most recently, April 1st, opened in Tucson.
That's great. A lot to learn. This is going to be good.
Man, It's been fun on most days. I mean, I look like you ever see those pictures of Obama when he took office and Obama today?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe the color here. I look that way. I mean, it's rough. And that's expansion related. There's no doubt about it.
I could believe it.
Yeah.
So let's go back. So you were, tell me a little more about your systems, maybe even specifically your marketing systems that generated all the short sale business.
So when we were short sale heavy, we were running, there's two primary sources of lead generation. Number one, I did spend a good amount of time, money, and energy on the radio. So I had some very specific messages on the radio, driving to a calculator that would show you how far upside down you were and how long it was going to take for you to break even. And that was the primary message.
Like short or stay?
It was off a shorter stay. I was one of their first guys. They were working.
Oh, great.
So I had, it was one site I had was howshortami.com. Another one was sscalculator.com. And really I just linked up and, you know, I'm not part of Rate, but I think you were just at the conference. I mean, I linked up with a couple radio personalities around the country and really drove those relationships hard and nailed it with those relationships. And frankly, turned a lot of business as a direct result of my radio campaign. Now, over the course of time, I watched my ROI go from 9X to 8X to 7X to the point where it got to about 4X and it didn't make sense anymore with the cost of doing a short sale. So I got off the radio, but my run was pretty long. That was number one. Number two source of business for me was referral based. So I started a program where I was paying upfront referral fees. So Frank has a short sale opportunity for me. Brian, as the realtor, I said, Frank, listen, I'm so confident in my ability to close your short sale. I'm going to pay you $1,000 of the 25% referral fee up front at the time I sign the listing, and then the balance upon closing. So if I don't close it for whatever reason, you keep your $1,000.
So you got the referrals from agents.
So I worked hard on those referrals. So I was teaching a ton of classes and getting in front of agents and all of that, with the objective being educate them on the process, but recognizing that if I had a 30-person class, within 10 minutes, 29 people hated short sales and became referral opportunities for me.
In a short sale market, when we talk about database and what you know now about building a database, I mean, do you want to build a database of people that shorted their homes? I mean, tell me about.
Well, I failed. I can tell you I failed on this. You know, again, if I could go back in time, I would have, you know, when we were running so fast with this short sale stuff. And again, I know it sounds so naive when I'm thinking back on the past, but I wasn't really focused on anything but that transaction. And I wasn't thinking, gosh, you know what? In 4 or 5 years, these people are going to be buyers again. Stupid, I know. So I compiled a pretty big database. I had all the records and all the data, but I wasn't communicating with them properly. Number one. Number two, I really pigeonholed myself, because when we did come out of the short sale world, and I started really working our database, like decided that maybe I should take this thing serious, I was calling people, my guys and girls were calling people, and they're like, well, wait, I thought you just did short sales. Like almost to the point where they didn't even realize, as crazy as it sounds, that we were realtors. Like they just thought we were a short sale company, because the public just didn't get it, because we had so much focus on, you know, short sale documentation, negotiating with banks, settlement letters, and so little focus on putting a sign in the yard and getting the most money for your property and providing customer service. Really, it was about avoiding foreclosure at that time and not providing, you know, profit margin or high level customer service. That's just the truth. So when we pivoted, right, and of course it felt like it happened like that. The truth is it happened over a 2-year period or so. But when we pivoted, what we realized was we really pigeonholed ourselves, which was good in one respect because we were the expert, but it was bad in terms of managing our database and future growth.
Okay, so you go to Seattle.
Go to Seattle.
Why Seattle?
It was talent driven. I mean, at that time, you know, I had made the statement, I want to go back in time and take advantage of the show. I wanted to prolong the life of my niche, right? So I was looking at, I can't remember everywhere at the time. I was looking at Seattle. I was looking at Boise. I was looking at
you picked the markets, but was there somebody in Seattle you wanted to work with? Or
That's ultimately what drove me there, right? Okay. So when I ultimately said, okay, here's the markets that work, I ended up connecting with a guy in Seattle that I'd known for a long time. We actually went to college together. We lost touch, and we ended up reconnecting at some point. And he was selling real estate and was kind of dabbling in the short sale world. And we were talking regularly about short sales and kind of telling him what I'm seeing here in Arizona, which was, front lines, and coaching to a degree him with respect to building a short sale business. And at some point, the conversation stopped being a coaching one and more so, hey, man, you want to go from A to B. I want to go from A to B. If we join forces, we can cut the time in half and go do that.
And there was no coaching or really on doing this. You just figure this all on your own in the beginning.
It was, with short sales, there's trial and error. Now, I'll tell you, Frank, and I think I may have shared this with you before. When I got into real estate, 07, February, I had never done anything traditional. I was fixing and flipping homes. So I was an investor that failed, which is why I got into sales. You're going to notice a theme here, by the way. It's how many times I fail. So I was an investor. I got into short sales, and I enjoyed. Every day I had a headset on like yours, and I'm screaming and hollering at banks. And then one day I look up, and there's seven other guys standing up at their desk, screaming and hollering at banks. So while I'm a realtor and while I'm running a real estate team, I never sold properties. I could count on, I guess, two hands now how many listing presentations, traditional listing presentations I've been on. I can count on one hand how many buyers I've worked with.
Okay.
So I can go out and do those things, right? I know I could go do it, but by the time the market had turned, I was already out of my business. I was no longer in it. I was on it. And if I ever did get in it, it was only to talk to a bank. So I had to learn the traditional business. And so in the short sale game, though, it was trial and error. And it was, you probably remember how it was. I'm sure a lot of the people, listening to this or watching this right now remember, calling the banks and faxing documentation.
Well, it was a new concept.
Right. And then how it evolved over time. The crazy thing is today, it's almost gone backwards and going back to the 07, 08 time where the banks are understaffed and the systems that they're using are archaic and all of that. It's interesting to see how it's gone backwards a bit.
So when you were in Seattle to scale them up, you just bought radio then, right?
We went radio first. So when I first expanded, now keep in mind, I know we're going to talk about expansion a bit. My mindset at that time, July 2011, wasn't really let's go open up multiple offices or teams all over the country. I was just looking to duplicate my team in Arizona. At that point, I was doing about $35 million in Arizona in sales, and I wanted to go create another $35 million team. I had recognized at that point that it would be easier for me to go to a different city and go 0 to 30 than it was going to be for me to go from 30 to 60 in Arizona. Right. So just my skill set, my people, my talent level at that point, I felt I was really good at going from 0 to 30 and it would be easier for me to go do that all over again, which is what I ended up doing in Washington.
So how does the deal work with someone in Seattle? Like if I was in Seattle, you want to work with me, what would be the deal?
Well, at that stage of the game, when I partnered with Wes, we were true partners. And so he was the guy on the ground running the show. My job was to provide structure, leadership, models, and finances. So I was negotiating all of the short sales from the hub here in Scottsdale.
Your marketing and admin's done out of Scottsdale.
All the hub was done down here, right out of Scottsdale, and he's on the ground. Now our volume grew such that we had to add some admin staff on the ground in Washington, but he was sharing in bottom line with me. And ultimately we got to a 50-50 arrangement.
Did you guys both put money in?
No, I funded it.
You funded it. So you funded it. Mm-hmm. You brought in the lead generation admin, and then he did all the work, and that's how you got a sweat equity.
Yep. And then we ended up, you look up and suddenly you've got another team. You have a lead listing specialist, which was my partner for all intents and purposes. We had our admin team here in Arizona, which was providing kind of the central hub. And then we ended up hiring a buyer specialist who had showing assistants, and it became just a duplication of what it is we had in Arizona. Now things have evolved quite a bit from then. Because again, my mindset wasn't going to expand and be all over the place. It was, let's just go double down. Let's go double this and go somewhere else.
Were they, at that time, were they building any database in Seattle?
It was all centralized database. So like I was on top producer at the time. So everything was being housed and managed from Arizona, but our database is just the same. It was just being input in the top producer. And at that time, Frank, we were using BombBomb for video distribution. And it was a half-ass effort. I mean, it was very, let's just do 33 touches because I read in a book somewhere that I'm supposed to do 33 touches. That was really it.
Got it. So let's go to the other markets. How did those evolve?
So Portland, the market made sense in terms of short sale. And it was in close proximity to Seattle, relatively speaking. It was a train ride for me. So every time I go to Seattle, I could go to Portland. And the first conversation about Portland really had to do with creating Wes, the guy in Seattle, creating his next opportunity. So as we're brainstorming, all right, man, he built this thing to a $40 million monster. What's my next opportunity? And so we started talking about regional operation and things like that. Now that never materialized, but that's how Portland came up. At the same time, talent was down in Portland. So a guy, Craig Rieger, who owns an office down in Portland, said, hey man, I've got there's some short sale opportunity here. I've got a couple agents that I think you might want to meet. And ultimately I ended up going down there and met a guy named Kevin who runs Point and has been running Points for us since end of 2012, beginning 13.
And did you do the whole partnership with him?
Whole partnership with him, same arrangement, a little bit different. The splits were bottom line still, but they were much heavier me until I was repaid in full. And then we went more to a 50-50 arrangement on bottom line income.
You're both equity owners. It's not one of these referral gigs.
Where we both have profit interests. So the company I own, the database I own, the systems I own, the brand, all of that is mine. He has an interest, just like Wes has an interest in bottom line profit.
Okay, so it's a profit share, but not stock.
Right.
Got it. So you still own it all, but it's a profit share on their end. Right. So it's really just a bonus.
I mean, you could call it that, yeah. Now, as it's evolved over time and we get into the other places, I stopped doing bottom line because I stopped with, not that I didn't want to share the P&L, but you can imagine how you have all these distinct and unique P&Ls.
Well, you got to build one hell of an accounting system when you start doing that.
It became very cumbersome. So I ended up now, all of our locations are on a gross commission split. And frankly, the gross commission split. So I'm paid via referral everywhere else now. I'm probably getting ahead of myself.
Well, no, it's like a royalty.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, for instance, like my guy in Denver takes 35 to 40% of every company dollar, every commission. Yep. So I'm no longer talking bottom line. I'm only talking top line. And I backed into what it is he was going to get paid on the commission based on the known expenses and my management of them. So frankly, I could win at a higher rate on it from a net income percentage if I'm managing the expenses, extremely well.
Yeah,
but I could also lose too.
It's a franchise model.
I would agree to that. I don't know if I'd call it royalty because I picture royalty being a much smaller amount. But in essence, and I'm paid via referral these days. Wasn't the way then. And part of the reason it wasn't that way was because, again, my idea of duplicating the team in Seattle, I'm like, okay, I've got to go get licensed in Seattle. So I'm licensed in the state of Washington. And then when I went to Oregon, I went and got licensed there. I'm not licensed in Colorado, Michigan, and these other places because I don't need to be.
Because you have a referral deal.
Right, exactly. I'm not paid commission from those respective brokerages anymore. I'm paid via referral, but not as an agent within them.
So is all the lead generation for all these markets is done out of Phoenix?
Everything.
Wow, that's incredible.
Everything. We ask our agents on the ground to do their own lead generation because we phone prospect a lot. My agents predominantly are required to do three main things, and that's be on the phone, hold an open house, and manage their SOI and database, follow the tasks. Those are their big three. And so they can do that locally. But, I have a call center. If I could pick up my camera and computer, I'd take you back and show you. But I've got maybe 9 or 10 today that are back there on the phone, just pounding the phones with headsets on, generating business in all of these areas.
Wow. So last year you did what, 340 deals?
We were at 373.
373 homes in all your markets sold.
Right, in total, which came out to about 110 million in sales.
Do you find it's very interesting? So a lot of people would say, why expand? Why not just become a bigger agent in Phoenix? And you had a very good reason. It's so much more easier to go from like 0 to 30 in multiple markets than having to go to 30 to 100.
Well,
that's still the case?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, I still find it easier for me personally. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous to some. I mean, there's guys and girls out there that I know, I have personal relationships with that have a $150 million team all in one, city, and that works for them. For me, it just seems easier to go have 5 $30 million teams. It just works within my model. Now, that being said, I think we complicate this expansion thing a little bit. Like it sounds a little bit cumbersome in what I'm saying, but I really don't think about it as multiple offices all over the place. I just think about it as another agent on our team. They just happen to be located 1,000 miles away. Like, let's talk about Kevin, right? Kevin's my guy in Oregon. Kevin has admin support. There's some expectation with respect to his activities. We provide him leads, right? And he's got it ultimately has a commission split with me. What's the difference between Kevin and a team and an agent you add on your team? The difference is the gap or the distance in the relationship. But he doesn't function that much different than an agent that I'm going to hire here in Arizona. So I think we oftentimes complicate. Now, early on, mind you, it was duplicate teams. So I wanted to go hire admin. I wanted buyer's agents all around that one leader. But as it's evolved over time, and I started grasping the fact that, you know what, Frank, if I want to go to San Diego, why don't I just go hire 3 agents in San Diego and have them act as if they're standing with me here in Arizona? What would that look like? Get them on Mojo as far as our dialer. Use Vyral to provide their database support and our SOI plan. I mean, it's no different. They just happen to be 400 miles west of me, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we really tend to complicate this stuff sometimes, and it's not that bad. And why would I want to go to a place like San Diego? Well, hell, man, you have $660,000 price points.
And tax deduction every time you come and travel here.
There you go. I mean, it's $220 or $220K in Phoenix. I could do $660 in San Diego. It's interesting. Now, all that being said, if you do 36 units in Phoenix, you're a good agent. If you do 36 units in San Diego, you're arguably one of the best out there. So there's some there's some differences, right? I mean, it's not always like when you go and do 400 units in Phoenix, I mean, you're awesome. Like, you're great. But it's 80 million in volume. You go do 400 units in some of these other places and you've got, 300 million in volume. So it's just a different way, and business is done differently.
Interesting. So did you just fall into the talent in these 6 markets? Because it sounds like the stars aligned for you to pick the markets that you wanted to go in that made sense. And then you just knew someone and ran into some amazing leader that's able to build a team virtually with you.
I probably didn't give you the whole. I mean, it wasn't Wes. Wes was somebody I've been talking with for years, so that one worked out.
Yeah, so that one worked out, and then
finding Kevin. While I told the kind of quick version of it, when I was talking with Craig, the office leader, I was also talking with 5 or 6 other allied resources of mine. When I got to Denver, that was a kid that we had. Danny, who runs Point for us up there, that was a guy who we had been working with and coaching and consulting for about 2 years before we decided to push play. Michigan was Jason Abrams is my partner in a lot of what we do, and he appears on a lot of the Vyral video. Jason, finding that relation, that was 3 years of him and I working together before we decided to say, let's ramp this up. So, I mean,
How are you working with him when he was in Michigan? I mean, was he working with Phoenix and he moved, or what?
Well, the backstory on Jason's a unique one. How I landed in Michigan was quite a bit different than how I landed in Seattle and in Portland. The abbreviated version of the story is Jason ran his own independent operation and specialized in professional athletes, right? So Jason's working with athletes all over the country. So his whole model was based on him getting on a plane, flying into, say, LA, grabbing David Beckham and another realtor who had a license and throwing them in a limo and say, let's go find a house. And his model was dependent upon him arriving and doing his thing. No one builds a relationship like this guy, right? So he's on the road. What's that?
No kidding.
Yeah, no, he's unbelievable in that respect. So Jason goes and does that. Well, at the same time, when the market tanked, it wasn't like the athletes and the guys he was working with avoided that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, they were probably hit harder than anybody else. So that's how Jason and I met, because I'm running the short sale machine. He's working with all these wealthy athletes who are all underwater on their homes. So next thing you know, I'm working on 5, 10, 15 NFL players' short sales, much of which flew under the radar, but they were challenging short sales nonetheless. You could Google what a guy just, signed a contract for, right? So that makes it a little bit challenging, but that's how Jason and I forged our relationship. Fast forward a bit, we get to realize Jason's model, while a highly successful one for him, was so dependent on him, and he's from Michigan and had this brand, but he had no real business being done in Michigan because he was athlete based.
Yeah.
So I went to him and we went together, and I'm like, why don't we just take my models and my system and your brand and just open up something in your hometown? And that's how Michigan came to be.
I think this is the most fascinating part of this hangout is just how you found the people that you expanded with, on how relationship and long-term driven it was.
Well, let's be clear around this though, Frank. I haven't been in production for a long time. And so when I got out of production, I know you hear this sort of thing and it sounds kind of cliche, but when I got out of production and I stopped lead generating for the next listing, I really was lead generating for people. Like, I know we talk about that, and I think that, many will say
but you really were doing it.
I was really doing it, man. Like, I was working hard to find people. I mean, I'm talking about the wins. Like, I haven't told you all the losses in terms of finding people. I mean, I've had a lot of, I've had my ass kicked on a lot of that stuff. I've learned the cost of a bad hire on more than one occasion. So I got, I started spending a lot of time in two areas. And that was learning how to find talent. I committed myself to learning how to find talent. And then I committed myself to learning how to really be a better leader. Like, I started learning and studying and reading. And again, I know it might sound hokey to some, but I got real focused on finding people and figuring out how the heck to lead them. Right. So I did those things, and that's resulted in some of these other markets. Now, California, frankly, I'm pretty much out of California because while we didn't lose there, winning was awfully hard. And it's not like I'm afraid of a challenge. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there in real estate, and California is a different animal. So it's not to say I won't be back in California doing business, but I've really slowed down on the Southern California expansion, which was, I'm not calling it a failure. I think it was just simply a result that I'm learning from, because we didn't lose, but we definitely didn't win. And I'd rather go double down in Denver, where I think, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and spend time and resources there than something that's not as low hanging. So, I mean, we didn't have the right people in California. That was people talent driven. And so even still, after studying leadership and studying talent, still can make some mistakes. There's no doubt about it.
Wow. I'm sure there's maybe 5 hours of content just talking about all that.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's what I spend time on. It's just like, there's some guys and girls I know I've seen you talk to that are masters of scripts or masters of other elements of the business. By no means am I a master in these things, but I do spend a considerable amount of my day and time calling people, talking with people. I mean, as a matter of fact, right before we jumped on, I was talking with a pretty well-known agent and office owner on the East Coast, and she says to me, what can I was helping her with something. She said, what can I do for you? And my question's always, well, hey, I'm looking for people in these respective areas. Who do you know? Like, that's just like a lot of our agents would say, hey, Mr. Seller, thank you for working with me. Now, who else do you know that I could assist?
Yep.
The same sort of question for me. It's just around people these days.
What year did you realize you had to start recruiting people and not getting listings? When was that?
Well, I got out of taking listings in roughly 2011 when I went to Washington. I knew that I had to find great people, but I can't really say that I made substantial progress in it until 12, 13. Like, Wes was a unique one. I think I was lucky in some regard there because I happened to already have a relationship with a really solid guy who built a business pretty quickly with me. But I think I would say 3-4 years ago is when I was really, got hyper focused on finding people, like the right people. I was hiring out of pain for most of my career prior to that, as opposed to, like you always talk about the NFL draft, right? And like, you'll see the draft is coming up here, and you'll see these teams talking about, well, am I gonna draft for a specific role on my team, or am I going to draft best player available and just figure it out? And I really started drafting best player available. Like, I'm like, hell, I'm just going to go find someone who I perceive to be incredibly talented, and we'll figure out where they're going to fit. We'll make it work. And that's kind of how, some of these other things are coming to be. Like, Tucson's a great example. Like, I'm in Tucson now, effective a few weeks ago. And the girl down there in Tucson, Andrea, man, she's been knocking on my door, and I can't keep her out of my office here in Phoenix. Like, she's like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Let me at it. Let me at it. And man, I mean, how do you, when someone's showing that passion and drive, I mean, even if she doesn't know what she's doing, she's going to work her butt off to figure it out. That was 6 months of talking and me pumping the brakes and her forcing my hand. I mean, that's the kind of talent I'm looking for. Someone that's going to run and run fast. And then I could just help, coach, consult, guide, and plug them into my system.
Last kind of question on expansion, because this is very fascinating to me before we get into more of the database stuff, which I want to definitely get to here on the Hangout for everyone by halfway done. Do you feel like when you're with all of this overhead that you've taken on for all of this, doing the agent expansion and the way that's structured, isn't there a lot of risk on your side to be able to weather like a downside in the market? Because you have a lot of fixed cost, whereas the people locally don't. I'm just curious on the economics and the risks of what you're doing and how you work that.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a great question. Whereas there are risks in some areas, I could just as easily argue that the diversity decreases my risk in others. Like, I'm in Denver and Portland right now, which are two of the hottest markets, if not the two hottest markets in all the country. I just happen to be located in those places. A lot of markets are hot.
Yeah, it's diversifying your markets. Like that happens there, you're good there.
I'm pretty diverse in that regard, number one. Number two, since we have just realtors or those in the industry watching this video, I can say out loud, a downturn in the market wouldn't be the worst thing for me, a guy who spent, who built a whole career on short sales. So I'm not rooting for it for the greater good of our economy and our housing market, but I'm set up for it. I'm prepared. Now, that being said, I do probably have a few more bills than most, but I wouldn't say it's my bills are bigger than any other team that's doing $3 million in commission. I'm a Keller Williams guy, so I live by that red book that we have. I haven't functioned at 40% net income in quite some time, but if I can get to 27, 28% net, I'm hitting target with a team my size. And so I'm a little bit heavy fixed cost wise in terms of people. And that's a focus for me this year. I mean, I do believe the market's going to shift. And, Gary Keller will say to us, you guys need to start thinking not in the phase you're in, but the phase you're going to be in. So if you're going to be in that next phase, start acting like it. And what's the first thing you need to be doing? You need to start preparing for survival mode. And what does survival mode look like? In my world, it's eliminating fixed cost. So I am, tying more pay to bonus or higher splits and eliminating certain fixed costs around salary, things like that. I spent a lot of time. I have an accounting background, Frank. Before I got into real estate, I was, a public accountant and all of that, which was a complete terrible fit for me. But it just did give me enough knowledge to understand the P&L, I think, to a little bit different level. And I spent a lot of time in it.
Hey, are you running accrual or cash?
Depend, man. I'm cash accounting, but there are times I look at certain accrual. Depends on what the accountant's going to let me get away with.
The only real estate agent I'd ever see on accrual accounting. We're still on cash too, man. I can't.
Yeah, no, I'm cash.
Accrual is crazy. That was a little accountant joke. Accountants work their assets off.
Oh, that's another great joke, Frank.
I'll stop. All right. So good. So let's talk about database marketing. So how in the world do you manage the databases of all these teams? Is it one big central database? Does everyone run their own little databases around the markets? Let's talk about the database. How's it managed and where do all the names go?
I guess that's a great question. So we really kind of break it down into two segments, two broad segments. So number one, I'm on Boomtown. So my CRM and how I manage leads is via Boomtown. Okay. I'm a huge, huge fan of Boomtown, not necessarily from the lead generation component, which is good, but I love the back end of Boomtown and the way that I can manage the flow of my leads and my past clients and all of that. I'm very task driven with respect to that. So when I review Boomtown of all of my agents, and we have a lot of agents now, I'm really watching their tasks. Are they up to date? Are they scheduled? All of that sort of thing. So very task driven. So everything's in Boomtown. When it comes to our database, I break it into two segments, meaning that we have what I would term SOI, so sphere of influence, and essentially everybody else, prospects and beyond. And so what we'll do is for SOI, every agent that starts on my team, from the day they're not even allowed to show up in the office unless they have 100 names, phone numbers, and email addresses that they consider influencers of their business. Okay?
What do you mean influencers of their business?
So somebody that has, if somebody that has the ability to either be a client or influence future business in some regard. So let's say your dentist may not necessarily be a client of yours today, but when you go sit in their chair, provided they don't have something in your mouth at the time, you have the ability to say to them, hey, you know, I'm in real estate. Who do you know?
Yeah.
So who can help build your business is really what I'm looking for. So they
100 names is what you got to.
You have 98 and you show up with 98, I'm sending you back home unless you get 2 more. And so we want name, email address, and phone number, and then ideally would like home address and some other information. But if I could get those 3, they go into the system. Now I talk about SOI because we treat our SOI a little bit differently than we treat our broad database. Frankly, it's more touches, more interaction. So my strategy around SOI is simple. And by the way, this isn't stuff I come up with. This is me flying around the country, taking great pride in being a phenomenal copycat. Like I take a lot of pride in studying those doing it at a much higher level than me and bringing it home and implementing it. So the guy that I built my SOI program around is a gentleman up in Vegas named Jason Lindstrom. And what Jason had taught me was, if you don't stay in front of people roughly every 17 days, and Frank, this is probably more your language than mine, but if you don't stay in front of people in some regard, roughly every 17 days, you're going to fall out. You're going to lose that mind share. And so what we do is make certain that we are interacting in some regard with everybody in our SOI roughly every 17 days. Now, when I say interacting, I'm not looking for my agents to always make phone calls. I'm not looking for them to always be saying, who do you know? I just want their name and real estate popping up somehow, some way every 17 days. So we'll do things like birthday cards, of course, holiday cards, of course. Viral videos are part of it for certain. If you see my videos, that's why I have the frame with all the agents' names on the top. That's so they could have their face seen and their name seen. And I don't have to say real estate. It's on the frame. It's on your email sign-off. We use Slide Dial. I use Facebook Messenger. Every 17 days, they're going to be tasked with doing something. Now, my value proposition to my agents is, of all of these touches, these interactions, we're going to manage roughly 80% of them for you. So if you're going to send an email, guess what? I have a template for you to send. Or if you're going to send a birthday card, guess what? We're going to handwrite it for you. You're just going to sign it. And so we take, again, it's part of our value proposition. We build out our SOI plan, again, a touch every 17 days, but we handle 80% of the tasks for them. That's SOI specific. Everybody else in the broad database is getting just some basic stuff, much of it built around your program. And I should say all of it built around your program.
Great. So you go a little more deeper with phone calls and direct mails.
Yes.
And message SOI.
Just even like a lot of people have in their SOI programs or database programs that they require some sort of face-to-face interaction at some, a coffee meeting each year. I don't necessarily ask for that. If my agent runs into somebody in a market that's in their SOI and says hi, chats with them for 30 seconds, I count it. Great. That's your face-to-face time for the year. You're good. So it's just a matter of planting the seed. So it's I would say it's less salesy in that regard, because I just want them, when they think real estate, they think Frank, they think, I got to call them. That's it. Now, I probably lose some as a result, but I know I gain some as a result too.
Sure. So this kind of begs the question. When we do the viral marketing program with the 2 videos a month, I'm sure you thought about, do I create a blog in every market? Am I going to have the point person in every market make 2 videos a month in all these markets? Am I going to buy a viral marketing program for all these people? And you said no to that. We're just going to go universal. Take me through that thought process and what universal means.
I think that so with BombBomb, I was on BombBomb, and BombBomb's a good program. But what ended up happening specifically for me was that it became, to your point, what you just said, I was shooting 6 or 7 videos with each respective agent in each location every month. And while it shouldn't sound that challenging, you probably know better than anybody, trying to get 6 agents to, number one, understand the concept that I didn't want videos longer than 1:45. Mm-hmm. One guy would shoot 4 minutes. The other one would shoot 30 seconds. One looked like she was going to cry on video. The other one, someone's got the screen pointed up like this. Others are down here. I mean, it was like
there's a lot.
How I mentioned that whole gray hair Obama thing? I think it might have stemmed from this our marketing campaign.
Well, so here's the deal, man. You really tried it. You said, look, I want to create the best content possible. I want to get these people on video. I want it coming from them to their audience. And it was just,
Well, the eye-opener for me was when I looked around and I watched, I'm literally standing in my office. I'm looking at these videos and I'm reviewing them. I've got my assistant, Cassie, right over here, who's in charge of this, and she's working on it. And at the same time, someone 2 doors down, she's looking at it. And I'm like, oh my God, we're clocking like 10 hours just trying to get these videos right. I know everyone's hourly wage, and I'm very familiar with what my hourly wage is. I'm spending more money just in time than I am in actually procuring business from what it is we're about to mail. Everybody after this routine every month would despise one another. Like I wouldn't want to talk to Wes for like 3 days. He wouldn't want to talk to me because I kept making him reshoot the video. It was a joke. And so, and then frankly, it wasn't professional in the slightest, because what do agents do? Well, when they're short on time, well, they get this thing out and they start doing this stuff, and they're like, and then, they say, well, if you have unprofessional videos, it's actually more appealing and all of that. Whoever came up with that was the guy shooting unprofessional videos, trying to make an excuse. And so I believed in that for a little bit. And so it was just a disaster. And that was just the first video. The second email that came out from via bomb template was something that we wrote. It was stats. And so guess what I had to do, Frank? I had to go to everybody in each local market and get them to pull their stats. Oh. Then I'd review them and I'd say, these stats make no sense. You're missing commas. We're missing digits. Bro, it was a disaster.
You were a viral marketing coach.
Oh, it was.
You were playing the role of what our business is.
Right. So then I call you
every day.
I call you, which by the way, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but like 3 years before I finally started working with Vyral, you had called me and said, Brian, you're going to hate doing all the stuff you're doing right now. You need someone to manage it all for you. And I'm like, nah, bro, I got it. Well, now 3 years later, here I am, right? So for when you and I talked and you're like, listen, here's what I can do for this price. Like at that moment, I was like, Frank, I'll pay you whatever you want me to pay you. I can't have this anymore. And that was before even seeing the product itself, which blows away anything I touched or could have created.
Yeah, because it goes through, we at least just sit down with you. We go through, make sure you look on video, walk you through at least how to structure what you're trying to say, edit it, write it. How about there's so many things, like the fact that I have an outline as to what it is you think I should be saying. Like I'll do these videos and I'll ad lib and I'll do all of that. But before, I'm just kind of guessing at what the content should be or structuring how I thought it should be structured. And then telling my agents, by the way, how I want it structured, which never works. So ultimately to your original question, making it universal and working with you guys and trying to determine what's a universal message. How can we appeal to the masses? How can we tweak this or tweak that so we can hit? We did have to do a little bit more front end work, I think, but it wasn't really all that hard. It really wasn't. And so for us to mail now out to about, probably have 40,000 or so that we distribute to, 35, 40,000. The results are better, and the message, which is universal, like I've always heard, it's got to be more local. We haven't seen the ramifications of that. We really haven't. And that's the thing; it's working the same. So you're just doing just more general real estate advice tips, so that you find like an HGTV, right, or what's going on in the general real estate market.
And at some point, Frank, and I think this was a recommendation of your crew. While I haven't done it just yet, like I'd like to get, when some of my guys or girls are in town from the respective locations, like I want to have them sit down and do the video with me, make an appearance, that sort of thing. You can still manufacture that where like I haven't seen your email templates, but your video goes out, but you have the pictures of all the people, it's like the top of the email has the markets you serve, has the pictures of all your people with their names next to them so the graphics show the markets you serve and the people, the point people, right? So let's say I'm in Sally's database in Denver and I get this email from your company. I'm like, what the heck is this? I open it, boom, I see her name, I see the market. Okay, I put 2 and 2 together. Oh, she works for this company. That's why I'm getting this newsletter from the firm. Mm-hmm. Right? That's exactly what my template looks like. It has all the markets and the people in each respective.
The information was disseminated through Vyral to you is great. I'm glad that's over here. Good. All right. Cool, man. So the whole title of this Hangout is, so you were interviewed for this and you doubled your database business. I would assume that's not all from Vyral, but I want to talk about specifically how you doubled your database business. Well, first off, you probably got a database, paid attention to it. I mean, how many years were you selling real estate before you said, hey, I should probably stay in touch with these people?
I was a good 4 or 5 years in, doing an awful lot of transactions before I said, you know what, it's not too, I mean.
So 2011, 2012?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I would say it's probably 12 before I was like, you know what, we've got an awful lot of names. We better start doing something with it. Oh, and by the way, I had an awful lot of names of people we hadn't done business with just yet either. Because remember, I'm on the radio. And I'm procuring a lot of
spending a lot of money on leads, and you have to wait to nurture them.
Right, and there's opportunity there in terms of nurturing, right? So I would say really 2012, I got more focused on it. And so without question, you know, the lack of focus and then suddenly the focus it clearly has an impact on how much business we're generating out of there. I think the repetition or what's being distributed to the database became rather uniform over time, not just in message, but we had a schedule and we actually stick to it. Like I've had people these days where if my video is delayed by a day, I'll actually hear from them. Like,
oh, that's great.
Yeah. So like that's when like a light bulb goes off when I got like a buddy of mine texting me saying, hey,
people actually want to hear your stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't even so much want to hear it or just make fun of me, whatever the case may be. I mean, this guy's like, hey, bro, I'm usually making fun of you on this day, and I don't see your video yet. I'm like, oh, it's coming out tomorrow.
Every video I get, I compare the gray hairs as they accelerate.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, you know, it's funny. And I'll tell you, Frank, originally when we started doing this, I was a little apprehensive to sending it out to everybody. Like when we started putting the database together for you guys, it was more than just like what I was.
Yeah, I said, give me everything. Give me the area agents. Like I didn't want to play the whole. I don't want people to hear this. The one thing that trips somebody up is we've talking to so many top agents, and everyone thinks like everyone has their databases all segmented of like here's this and that and this and that, and no one does. And the number one thing that holds people back is I want to clean up my database.
Yep.
When I hear that, I want to gouge my eyes out. And I say, yes, you want to do that, but just start today and clean it going forward.
Yep.
You sitting down and doing that retroactively, good luck. It'll never happen.
We said that. I was like, you know what, man, let me get this stuff a little bit more organized. And then you said, no, give me the logins to this, and
Pull
this,
it all.
and extracted it all.
Yep.
And you're right. As a result, it's cleaned itself up. And we've obviously been able to clean it up too with respect to responses and things like that.
Yeah. So we take all of it, all the area agents. It's good for recruiting. It's good for, I took all the seller leads, all the buyer leads, all the past clients in Sphere, and the leads from all the agents and all the markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have some type of reconnect message, and then the communication starts going out, and if people find interested, not, they can subscribe. It's no big deal. What about the open and clicks? So when it comes to growing your database, you're very phone heavy, outbound prospecting, making calls. I'm assuming the agents in their markets are working their sphere, doing open houses, meeting with buyers, right? Mm-hmm. So with all of those things happening, they're all going into Boomtown. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All into Boomtown. Then
right.
Once a month, we basically just go into your home Boomtown with every single contact in there, pull it out, append it to our stuff, deduplicates, and then that's how we add the emails to our list. So that's how you add emails to your database. The first part of the viral marketing plan is you got to be getting emails and contact information, people that give you permission to stay in touch in the first place.
Right.
That's what you're doing. Let's talk about your outbound prospecting. I mean, are you driving home when you talk to someone from a just listed, just sold call and expired saying, hey, what's your email address? I want to send you some great, helpful stuff. Have you been role-playing that script with your guys on the phone?
Well, a lot of my email requests, like the role-playing or the scripts that we use, are built around providing properties for them to view. So for instance, obviously with buyers, it's, hey, let me get your email address so I can set you up with a search, blah, 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 blah. We do the exact same script for sellers. What we'll say, let's say it's a circle prospect and just listed, just sold. I'll say, great, Frank, are you aware of all the properties selling in your neighborhood? Not really. Here's what I'd like to do. I've got a proprietary software where I can set you up. I can plug you into my system, and every month it's going to distribute to you the homes that went on the market and those that went under contract, so you know more about your neighborhood than everybody else around. Does that sound like a great thing for you? Great. All I need is your email address.
What's your email?
Frank at, And so much of what, again, when we ask for email addresses, it's typically to provide some sort of item of value. It makes it very, and we also use a lot of assumptive closing in my business. So we're assuming they're already going to give it to us. So my guys will say something, and we work on this all the time. They'll say something along the lines of, you mentioned you wanted me to get this. I think you were telling me your email was frank@vyral.com. Just want to make sure. Is that right? Yes. Great. I mean, we talk through it. We're asking for it, but it's very nonchalant. And it's like, of course you want to give us your email address. Like, how dare you?
Well, you're bringing them value. You're sharing with them what
but we feel good about what we're given too, by the way. I never think like, oh my God, I want to spam you. It's like these reverse MLS portals or whatever you want to call them. They are of value. And I used to look at different items of value, and I used to have different drip campaigns and things like that. And ultimately I came back to just give the people what they want. And what do buyers want? Properties. What do sellers want? Properties. I just want to see what everybody else in the neighborhood's doing.
Well, we're going to be talking about that. Me and you have an in-depth discussion to ramp up your inbound marketing even more.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
to do that is going to be to come up with a list of offers that buyers and sellers and homeowners aren't even interested in buying or selling actually want from you, which is going to be, we talked about, you're going to have to invest in some creative content to create that content uniquely.
Yeah, we're looking for more. To your point, there's no question. I think that we and everybody else across the country is definitely looking at trying to create more of what I would call an opt-in.
Yep, more permission-based marketing.
Right. And
in order to get permission, you have to give them something in return for their permission. So you have to create the content. So we're gonna go deeper in that. One last question, then Chris McNamara has a good question here. We're gonna get to in a second for you, Chris. Calling the opens and clicks. So when these videos go out, let's say you make a topic on the 3 things you must know before you sell your home this spring. You probably want to follow up with the people that watch that video, right?
Right.
So who's doing that?
So, so what we'll do is after we send something out, I'll get the list of all the opens and clicks from you guys. I'll send it off to someone on our staff that's going to more or less go through every one of those and see if it's a lead that's already assigned or being worked by an agent. So we're going to distribute that list, or we're going to cut that list down and isolate the names to each respective agent if they're in fact assigned to them already.
So this is very important. When you send that list over to me, there's a column in there of what market they're in or who the owner is of that contact.
Right. So I can
let me say it again. This is very important, everybody. If you're in multiple markets and you're sending me this list, you got to make sure that there's another column that you send in the spreadsheet that also says maybe who the owner of the contact is by name, or maybe even by market. So when I send the report back to you, it's not just a random list of names. You actually know how to give the names back to the respective people or the markets to call.
So we'll scrub it that way. And then, we won't spend an insane amount of time. And then ultimately it will make its way to one of my inside sales agents. That is, her skill set. She's the warmest, friendliest, best person to call on this sort of thing. And she's calling on behalf of the company. And oftentimes, depending on what just went out, usually it's just like a timing. Like we just happen to be calling that day type script.
Well, it's like, hey, I see you subscribe. I'm with customer service here at the Gubernick team, and
right.
Want to see if you have any questions I can answer for you. We like to do this as a community service.
Well, we have a lot of timing phone calls that we make. Like for instance, I do pull divorce lists, right? So I'm not going to call and say, hey, Frank, it's Brian from Home Helper Consultants over here at Keller Williams. Looks like you're getting divorced. It's
hey,
more
so sell a house. I'll sell it too.
It's more so like, hey, we just sold the home down the road. Just reaching out to all the neighbors, because I know that if you're divorcing, odds are you're considering selling your home.
Yeah, so you don't bring that up. You don't bring out, you clicked this video.
Exactly. Now, there are some specific things that we've sent out with you that you can open up with that script.
Correct. That would be like the magical emails where every 2 to 3 months or two to three times a year, what we recommend here at Vyral is you send out 2 educational videos a month, 2 Q&A helpful videos a month to add value. And obviously there's some indirect call to actions that go with those, to search for homes or get your free home value report of what it's worth. And certainly there's value there, but probably 2-3 times a year I write like a really, I'll call it awesome, because the results I hear.
You're actually due for one. I'm glad.
Well, everyone says I'm due for one every day.
No.
I usually like to base them in real estate around Fed decisions. So whenever the next Fed decision comes out, like in June, early June, maybe late May, I'll probably write something. But basically,
I could use one of those right now. The last one you wrote, which I tied back to a seller home valuation page, crushed it. It was the best. It was the best thing I've distributed in 3-4 years. I wrote that. I told you that.
Yeah,
best thing I've sent out.
I appreciate that.
Highest click-through rate I've ever had. Highest conversion rate. Frank, I think you ought to be writing these things every 3 weeks, not every 3 times a year.
Well, I wish I could, and you'll see why you can only do it a few times a year. Google, for anyone who's watching, Google the magical seller lead generation email. Literally type into Google, magical seller lead generation email. You'll see different times of the year. I think there was one for winter 2016 was the last one I put together. And basically, it's just a direct, simple, plain text message out to your database that says, here's probably why you want to find out what your home is worth. Click here. And it goes through all those people, just drives all that attention, all that traffic back to an opt-in, and your opt-ins for your free value report just go through the roof.
I averaged 10 to 15% conversion on this specific site. After you sent that and I isolated it to a similar site, I was at 46 or 47%. So I mean, I literally had 3, 4, almost 5 times my average.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, one's coming due. You're correct. I know.
It was cool. We do.
We got a question here from Chris. Good to hear from you, Chris. Thanks for being on the Hangout, my buddy. When you talk about CRMs, what channels besides phone and email are you seeing great results from? Direct mail, text, events with clients?
Man, that's a great question. I wish I had some amazing answer to give you on this. We are so phone and email driven. We will text. Text is a little tricky. I'm a little, I don't like to say concerned, but we will send out text, but it's got to be to a person or a prospect that we actually don't consider all that warm. In other words, like we'll do some mass texting, but I'm very hesitant right now at this moment in this current environment of doing a lot of things that people are not asking for. So I'm a little bit more calculated in that, but we do, I mean, I like to look for the things that are hardest. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I always tell my guys and my girls that we're going to do all the things that I believe the failures in our industry just simply don't like to do, or that it's too hard for them to do it, which means more intimate contacts. And so the phone conversation, I mean, hell, if I could knock everybody's door, I would. Now, a group like an outing of some sort or a client appreciation, I would love to do those sorts of things, but my business is a little bit different in that I can't run these appreciation meetings in 6 different states. I mean, I could, but it would be pretty cumbersome. So that's why I resort so heavily to the phone. I'm just looking for more intimate contact, and it's usually going to be a voice conversation.
I would probably say to add to that, Chris, more like really quick one-to-one video email type prospecting through like BombBomb or something. Like you're in your Gmail, you hold down a button, you record a video, and it's done, right? Like a personal video message. Right?
It's something we were talking about before, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, like in your lead, at least in your lead follow-up process, like to cut a quick video and include it in the part of lead follow-up. The other thing too, you talked about door knocking. We have a client up in Silicon Valley that it's very hard up there. No one answers their phone. Very savvy tech people. Like no one answers their phone. They don't know it, right? It's a very extremely educated market. He's like, dude, phone prospecting is just impossible. He's tried it in Silicon Valley, in the heart of it, the Cupertino and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it's like the only way I can get, communication directly with these sellers in these homes is like knocking on their door. And I don't want to do that. So he actually hired 3 college students and put them on Segways.
That's so funny.
They drive around on Segways. Yeah. They each 3 kids knocking 100 doors a day each. That's 300 doors a day. And next morning they come back. They get a couple leads back to him. He calls leads in front of them. And they do it. They have a door knocking campaign like that.
Yep. That's actually started as a joke using the Segway. And now I've heard that's like the 3rd or 4th story I've heard of someone getting a group together and using Segways and door knocking. Yep. I mean, literally, I keep hearing about it. Started as a funny thing that someone mentioned a year ago. And
well, when they get on the door, they have a little caricature, I think it's called, like some funny drawing of them, like saying, "Hey, we're the agents on Segways. What's your home worth?" And they leave something on the door, like a little message that I was here to update you on your home value or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Brian, thank you so much, man.
Hey, thank you.
Great knowledge today.
I appreciate it, man. It was fun. Thank you.
Yep. So where can someone go to see your videos?
Like my all the viral videos we've shot. I'm not sure, Frank. Where can they go? I guess our blog, but I'm not prepared to give you any of the detail because hell, I don't know. Where do they go?
I wish I knew where it was. I should have researched.
I can pull it up for you. I'm assuming
Brian Gubernick videos. I'm sure something will show up. What's the name of your team?
Home Helper Consultants. So if you go to homehelperconsultants.com, homehelperconsultants.com, I'm just actually trying to pull it up right now so I don't embarrass myself entirely. But on our blog, on our site, which is where I'm 98% certain that's where they're all ending up loading. But yeah, homehelperconsultants.com. Go there and you can check them all out on the blog tab.
And if you want to work with Brian in any way and you want to expand into a market that makes sense for him, contact him. I think he has a lot of experience that can help you expand with his help. So
I appreciate it.
Yep. So we'll end it here. Thanks so much for watching. And we have another good hangout coming. We try to do one of these, but every 2 weeks. See you guys.
Thanks.